Okay, so we are live with the Node.js release working group meeting on the 21st of May, 2020, and we will work from the agenda issue, which is in the Node.js release repository is issue 579. I will go ahead and start my stream. I will also promote Miles. And share my screen ready to talk through the agenda. Awesome. So the first item on the agenda today is issue 567, which is the release plan. We have releases scheduled up until June. I think 14.3 ran out yesterday. I'm not sure anything else anyone wants to mention about that release, or I think there was a regression in 14.2 that is now fixed in 14.3. But I think we're going to try and land that patch in a non-breaking way. It's the Windows standard out issue, but we're going to try and resolve that. The next item on the agenda is the imminent issue for Morocco users. I think, Richard, you pulled this into the agenda.
I mainly pulled it into the agenda because there's a very small time window that this is actually going to affect releases. So it basically sounds that if we are going to release a fix on release lines, whether that's in a existing planned release or not, basically things will start going wrong in this particular time zone from the 24th of May, and then will correct itself on the 31st. So if we don't do anything by the 31st, this issue is sort of closed, as in we're too late. Although I think there is a historical element if there's anything out there that wants to try and calculate times in this time zone during that period. Otherwise, if we do want to get a fix out, then ideally it would be before the 24th, when the change of date affects the actual time zones. I think the pull request has been merged into master, but it hasn't gone into a release. It's not gone into current, for example.
Yeah, it was merged 2 days ago, so it just missed the cut for the 14 release. I don't think we are going to do a release before the 24th. I feel like that's unlikely, especially as we try to avoid Friday releases. And that's Sunday, isn't it, the 24th?
Yes.
So it seems like our comment on this one would be like we missed a window to get this out, but it would be good to correct it for the people operating on time zones like historic times. But I think it will just naturally flow into a release at that point. So
yeah, I guess put it in that issue and see if anyone objects, I guess.
Yep, I'll just say we have no planned scheduled releases before the 24th. This will go out with any future releases and then link to the schedules. This should land on all release lines though, right?
I think so, but I don't think it can be cherry picked across, because I think all the release lines have different versions of ICU in them.
Right.
So it will probably need manual porting.
Okay.
Because it's a rebuild of the data file. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So 14 is probably okay. It will land cleanly in 14, but I think for 12 and 10 it would need a specific port for the version of ICU that they're currently on.
if we're not putting this out as a like a emergency fix, I guess we may as well abide by the must be in 14 for a couple of weeks first rule. Sure.
I guess the interesting question there is, like I said, it's not a clean cherry pick across. So even if it does live in current for 2 weeks,
it's going to be something.
It's going to be a bespoke
yeah.
change in the LTS releases anyway. So I don't know what that 2 weeks gives us.
Any stability.
Yeah.
Benefits. Agree. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think the only thing we can do really is put the current plan into this issue and then check that nobody actually objects to it.
Yep. Okay, I'll do that. I think that's all we need to mention on that one. Please let me know if you see anyone waiting to be promoted. And the other one to discuss, NPM currency on node 12.
I think it actually means node 14.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So I put this on there because it concerns the, something down the line for node 14, which is actually out now. So it's not, we've got a release out there, and we generally don't put December major bumps of NPM in a release line, although so a bit further down I did put some history. So we did do it for NPM 6, where NPM 6 was deemed to be a very small delta over NPM 5 in terms of breaking changes. So we actually deemed NPM 6 December minor for node, and that did go out in node 10 and 8, I think. So during node 10 and node 8, we did bump NPM from NPM 5 to NPM 6. The only other occasion where we bumped NPM an NPM major was in 0.10. So that was quite a long time ago, and that was for security reasons. So this all comes down to, okay, NPM 6 to 7 is a Semver major for NPM. Is it going to be a Semver major for node? And if it is, what does that mean for node 14? Because node 14 is already out there with NPM 6 in it. And we would generally not want to put something breaking in there unless there was a reason like a security fix, or I think that is probably the only reason we do it normally. But I haven't found anything.
I'm trying to dig up our process here, because I do believe that we actually did a major in the past before.
So I wrote down there when we moved NPM from 5 to 6. And then the only other occasion I could recall was when we went from NPM 1 to NPM 2 in node 0.10, which was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if you can recall any other occasions where we've changed the NPM version during a release line. So we've done it in the past, just before we've cut a major, but during the lifetime of the major. I think those are the only two that I can recall.
We had some explicit policy here. I'm trying to find it.
Around NPM updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know where it was though.
I think I just found it. It's maintaining NPM. And it's pretty liberal. It's the specific Node.js release streams the new version will be able to land into are at the discretion of the release and LTS team.
Fair enough.
Okay, so for our court to decide.
So I guess, like, for me, one of the things that I think would be really important would be a combination of, like, on one hand, not just breaking people, and like people have NPM in their pipelines. Roy is here and may be able to give more insight.
Yeah.
But I know even for like Google, for example, like we used NPM in the pipeline for like part of our deployment, or like build packs that are like cloud native build packs rely on NPM. So changing the major version, if it breaks that, could be very disruptive. The flip side is, I don't know what kind of LTS process y'all are planning, and that would be good to know. But also just kind of like, if NPM 7 is what will be primarily maintained and used, if it is at a certain degree of stability, I think it may be prudent for us to land it if it's proving not to be very disruptive in the ecosystem. But Roy, you were going to say?
Sure. Yeah, I can provide some feedback from the NPM's side point of view. So basically, I'm kind of torn on this because the reality is that there are going to be like a lot of small, very subtle breaking changes that like might affect the ecosystem. Like on top of my mind, things like installing peer dependencies, like NPM run switches around a bunch of environment variables it sends to scripts that might break again in subtle ways, like pipelines. So that kind of scares me. But at the same time, there's so many good stuff, like so many improvements, so many new features, and it will be a shame to kind of like not have that for ages until like people actually move to Node 15, 16, right? So I'm kind of over the fence, but to give maybe some idea of a timeline we're discussing, like we're hoping to send the beta version out really soon, like early summer. So we're kind of aiming to that, but there's no word written in stone yet. So like that's just a vague approximation.
I mean, Node 15 is planned for October, so it's not that far away.
Right, yeah. And we'll probably get some time to test it out with our user base, I guess.
I guess one of the things I was trying to point out in the issue that was raised in the TSC repo was there was a line about getting it in before 14 goes LTS. But from my point of view, I don't think it really matters if Node 14 is either current or in LTS or active LTS, that is, in terms of, you know, if we were going to land NPM 7 in it, the only difference about being in LTS would be that we would then want the update to live in current for 2 weeks, and that might be preferable for something like this, that we would want it, you know, in the current release for 2 weeks before putting it into an LTS release, just because of the risk factor.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I think my takeaway would be like, maybe it would be prudent to wait for the NPM beta to be out and collecting data from users, see how much of a disruptive release it really is, right, from a breaking change point of view.
Yeah, I have no problems there. I mean, obviously it's easier to be cautious, and users can always install NPM themselves outside of the actual releases we do. So all we're talking about here is bundling it in the actual Node releases, but it's a bit harder to bundle something and then go backwards than it is to bundle something and potentially update it to a new version.
Yeah, sure.
Will NPM 6 continue to be maintained? Or will it be any security problems just get patched in 7 only?
Well, as far as I know, yes. I think we'll be maintaining 6 for a while still, but I don't really know long-term plan, what it looks like, to be honest.
Okay. Because that might tie, that would kind of tie us into upgrading, I think, unless we patched NPM ourselves, which we probably wouldn't want to do.
Right, yeah. But I think as long as NPM 6 is in the core, we'll be maintaining it, right?
Okay. Once we've finished the meeting, I'll paste in all of the comments that Richard mentioned and links to our historic.
Sure, yeah. But if any other question, I think this is kind of my point of view. Yeah, I think the most prudent thing is to wait for the results from the NPM beta go out.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I just wanted to put this out on here because the issue was raised in the TSC repo, but obviously it does affect releases. So I kind of figured we would want to discuss it amongst ourselves anyway.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, this is awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with that. And was there anything else added to the agenda?
I think that was it.
No. One thing I will mention is I think both Ruben and I today had the mission of trying to clear out some old release issues. I think he's closed off quite a few stale ones. But if anyone has any disagrees that this should have been closed, then feel free to reopen. I did do a light scan through all of our open issues. A lot of them are about creating documentation.
What's that removing Python 2.7 issue? Does that belong here, or should this be in core? Or is this Node.js? I mean, it kind of feels this doesn't really belong here, unless something else happened in the comments. But
yeah, I feel like this can be moved.
okay, I'll take a look at this after the meeting.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Richard. And yeah, we've got a lot of things like onboarding information, document how to backport majors, create offboarding documentation and policy. Oh, this is one I went to action today to rename the SitGym team to release automation, but I don't think we've audited the current SitGym team membership, and I wasn't sure I should do it because I'm not in the SitGym team, so I wondered if someone else would be, who is in SitGym, would be happy to audit the
I
team.
could help with that.
Awesome. I think there's a couple of people that maybe aren't as active as they used to be, so I don't know, but I will also volunteer to be part of the SitGym team as well.
I nominate you to be part of the team.
Yay, SitGym.
That nomination.
I didn't realize how small the SitGym team was until I opened up the members list today.
Is it more than 4 people? Off the top of my head.
I think it was 6 or 7, but I don't know how many
more than I thought.
are going to go as part of the audit if they're no longer have time. So I guess looking through the release schedule is always worth doing. How are we for Node 12? The next release is due
on Tuesday.
It's the big 1217 minor that Michael's working on. That's a reminder I need to check out the PR and review it, I think. Is that that's the one where in the release mentoring we went through each?
Yes, we yanked out
minor.
two commits, didn't we?
Yeah.
Or we asked Michael to yank 2 commits out, which they were.
Yeah. I see. I think one of the ones that we decided not to pull in has been reverted again on master.
Yes. The one of the NAPI ones was reverted.
So it's probably a good call. And last 10. TBD if needed. I was going to prepare a 10 if the time zone stuff was ready, but it didn't look like it was. And so I'd rather wait for the decision on the 14 for the time zone. And if people do object to waiting, then I can sign up to do a 10 release, but I feel like this can just be pushed out until we need to do a release. we're in maintenance now, aren't we? So it will just be our call when we feel like there's enough significant bugs or updates that we need to put one out.
Yep.
But oh, the NAPI exemption. I don't know if we should raise an issue to add that back. I deleted it. I kind of remember deleting it. But if we want do we want to explicitly call this out again?
It's mainly just to clear up confusion as to when an API changes can land or not.
Yeah.
There does seem to be, again, this comes back down to the LTS phases and people just trying to cram things in before something changes phase. So I think there was at least one or two pull requests where it was, we need to try and get this in quickly so that we can get it in before 10 it goes into maintenance. But I think the reason this all came about was I was trying to find the quote put in there saying, no, you don't need to wait, because we have, we made a case that we can land LTS, so we can land NAPI changes
In maintenance.
during maintenance for compatibility reasons.
Yeah.
But then, yes, because we deleted the words, I couldn't quote anything. And it's always nicer when you can quote policy rather than just state it and hope
Yeah.
to accept it.
Yeah. Okay. I can look at adding it back. One thing I don't want to give the impression of is that anything that has the label NAPI can land straight away, because I think
I think it's fair enough. I mean, we could open the discussion with the NAPI team, maybe only the actual version things. So I think NAPI has things that are versions. So for example, stuff that's in NAPI 6, but then they also have like experimental APIs.
Right. Okay.
And we could try and make that distinction so that commit that we excluded from Node 12, that wasn't part of the stable NAPI versioned APIs. That was an experimental one.
Right.
And maybe it might make sense for the LTS things to restrict, or not restrict, but basically say, either leave it to, as a sort of an exemption, but still at our discretion, or if you want, if you maybe make that distinction between stable things and experimental.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will open an issue to say add an API exemption back, and point to this discussion, because maybe even like, I know Michael may be willing, or we could maybe even go speak about it at an NAPI meeting to see what they think, whether they agree that experimental things shouldn't be in LTS, or they might have some very strong reasons why it should be. So having an issue might open up that discussion between us and the NAPI team.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
And it would be good to set their expectations, because I do see them opening PRs to backport NAPI things into 10 and 12. And then we sort of just the communication around when those are expected to land and things.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we still adhere to the baking time for an API in current?
I guess that's open to discussion.
Okay. Sure. Is there anything else anyone needs to mention or would like to mention today? Otherwise, we've reached the end of our brief agenda, plus a few extras.
Nothing from me.
Nope. Okay, I will stop sharing. I will stop the recording.